And Town Board, you're on the air. YouTube is streaming and phone lines are operational.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the March 1st work session of the East Hampton Town Board. Carol, would you please read the roll call?
Councilwoman Burke-Gonzalez.
Present.
Councilman Leash.
Present.
Councilwoman Overby.
Here.
Councilwoman Rogers.
Present.
Supervisor Van Scoyac.
Present. Please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Today's public meeting will begin with a public session where any member of the public may address the board on any topic. We ask that you please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less and mute any device you might be listening to this broadcast with in the background so we don't get feedback. We'll be discussing the following topics. We'll have Jeannie Carosa, our purchasing director, presenting bids. We'll have discussion of the new airport presentation, proposed prior permission required framework with our outside counsel Cooley. The new airport revised EAF negative secret declaration, Lisa LaCourie. We'll have the new airport scoping meeting. This is to talk about the draft generic environmental impact statement and new operational policies, again with Lisa LaCourie and outside counsel Dan Rizzo. That'll be followed by a revised capital plan for 2022, Rebecca Hansen, and a discussion of the South Fork Wind Farm's proposed revegetation plan with Council John Jolnicki and Kim Shaw, our Director of Natural Resources. That'll be followed by liaison reports and resolutions. I will be taking comments, public comments on the specific discussions about the airport at the end of the town board's discussions and presentations. We will go back to the phone lines if you have comments specifically about what's been discussed under those topics. Otherwise, anyone's welcome to comment on the general public comments at this time. Do we have anyone on the line at this point?
Yes, we do. I am unmuting right now. Okay, caller ending 5563. You're on the air. Hello.
Hey, good morning. It's Kelly Bloss. I had a couple of questions and comments regarding the draft GEIS scoping document. And if these are going to be addressed later on, fantastic. But specifically, I didn't see any type of engagement of airport operators, local EMS, fire, police on the impacts environmentally. So it is much bigger than emissions and direct traffic studies. So I'd like to see that considered. And also, given that there's one roadway in and out of Montauk to the East Hampton Airport, any egress from these side roads into 27 up to the Napeak stretch should be evaluated because all of the back roads and egress points are going to be impacted. So lastly, it wasn't clear in the document what the actual study period is and the ability to capture the impact of the peak period. And last comment, and maybe it'll be addressed later, is who actually is conducting this study. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. The study period initially will be the summer season. And ahead of that, we appreciate your comments about things to consider as part of the draft environmental impact study. We are seeking comment from the general public about things that they might be concerned about, impacts that they foresee might occur. So your input's very much welcome. And you're welcome to make comment again after we go through this topic discussion with the town board, with the consultants and outside counsel. So feel free to stay on the line if you want to make further comments at that time.
Do you require me to put this in writing in an email, or does this count as public record and a contribution to the
This does count as
evaluation of the
public
hearing?
comment. Yes, this does count as public comment, but we, of course, would welcome you to send in your written comments if you choose to do so as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
All right. Unmute the next caller. Hello, caller ending 52.
I'm Marcy Hancock.
Hello, you're
I'm
on the
sorry,
air.
could you
I'm Marcy
please-
Hancock.
Marcy
Okay,
Hancock.
thank you.
Thank you, Marcy.
Hi. Thank you. I'm calling from 3 Mile Harbor Boatyard, where I've been a resident for 22 years. Most people don't realize there is actually a neighborhood back here clustered around the 3 boatyards. But specifically, I'm calling about the 5 large modular homes that came rolling into the boatyard late in the night, early morning of Thursday, February 17th, and remained parked there over President's Day weekend. My issue has nothing to do with the modular homes themselves. In fact, I think they're a great solution. My issue is that the modulars often need a staging area since the bridges and tunnels regulate when they can cross over to Long Island. Over the years, the town-owned boatyard parking lot has often been used as a staging area. And the problem is they come rolling in well after midnight, usually around 1 in the morning or later. It sounds like a small army is invading. There are advanced trucks with flashing lights. Each modular has a truck cab that has to be dislodged once they're in place. It takes well over an hour to get them all in place. It's total disruption. So I'm just wondering, how can the town regulate and enforce the staging of modular homes? It seems unfair that this disruption and inconvenience should be borne by the residents. And it also seems unfair for the town to subsidize the construction of these homes by offering them town land surrounded by residential taxpayers as their staging area. So thanks for considering this issue.
Yes, Marcy, thank you so much for calling in today and expressing your concerns. We have become aware of this and several other circumstances recently about mobile homes, or rather modular homes being stored on town property. And the town board has been unaware of that occurring until after the fact. And we're going to be discussing putting together a policy, a formalized policy about how this takes place in a permitting process, so that we don't have these kind of disruptions and of various, departments of the town not knowing what's going on, so that there's better coordination, communication, and that we have all the bases covered. So we appreciate you taking the time today to call in.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. It's not even the staging; it's the late night loud arrival. But thanks. Glad you're addressing it.
Yeah, understood. So that's something that we will take a look at and trying to identify, obviously, places that won't be so disruptive. And we apologize for the inconvenience.
Peter, are you going to discuss this in your liaison report as well?
Yeah, I'll be bringing it up in the liaison report. And then I think, the board also, should be thinking about the policy that we want to formalize. It's been kind of a ragtag kind of a process, as some people have contacted the highway department, some people contact the police department. There isn't any unified policy, and I think it's probably time to put one in place given some of the concerns.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll unmute next caller. Hello, caller ending 4937. You're on the air. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, sir. Could you please announce yourself? Hello? Okay, I'm going to move back to that caller. Hello, caller ending 2650. You're on the air. Hello? Hello, caller, ending 2650. You're on the air. Hello. One more time. All right. I hear something on the other line, but I don't hear anybody responding. So, with that said, we don't have any other responsive callers on the line.
Okay. In that case, we'll go forward with our work session topics. And the first up is Jeannie Carosa. Do you have Jeannie in the waiting room?
Yes, we do, and she's coming in right now.
Great.
Hi,
Morning, Jeannie.
I'll be with you in a second here.
Okay.
Okay, here I am. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Few bids to go over, a couple of notices. Our first bid is for the Atlantic Avenue concession contract. The apparent high bidder for that one is Hampton Soft Ice Cream Incorporated. A total amount for 3 years of $186,600. The first year being $60,200. Second was for the disposal site for ground leaves. Calverton Materials at $20 per cubic yard is the apparent low bidder for that. And then the final bid to accept would be the Maloney Property Bamboo Removal. Parent low bidder is Jackson Dodds and Company, and the amount for that was $13,730. We also have extension for the traffic signal and maintenance contract and Hink Electrical Contractor for that. And then lastly, we'll have a couple of notices. First, for the Springs Library accessibility improvements. That includes the bathroom and some walkways there. And then home renovation at 54 Tub Orsman Road. And that's all.
Thank you, Jeannie. Any questions from board members? Okay, thanks so much, Jeannie.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks. So we can go to our next topic, which is the new airport presentation of proposed prior permission required framework. And I believe we have our outside counsel with Cooley. Bill O'Connor in the waiting room, Jason?
Yep.
And Bar. We have our outside counsel.
Oh, could we please mute our background devices, gentlemen?
Bill O'Connor in the waiting room, Jason?
Yep.
And Bar.
All right. I'll just send a quick message to Andrew Barr to mute his out.
Yeah, please mute her. Hi, good morning, everybody. You've got Bill O'Connor here.
Morning, Bill.
Andrew.
Morning, Andrew. Welcome.
Hey everyone, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Doing well. I apologize for the feedback. I was still on the YouTube when this got clicked over. So.
Understood. Is there anyone else that we need for this, or is everyone here that needs to be here?
I think everyone's here for this topic, and we can go ahead and get started. So welcome, Bill and Andrew. You're going to walk us through the presentation of the prior permission required framework. It's part of the regulations that would be proposed for the new airport.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor, members of the town board. I'm going to first, before we get into the proposed framework, which my colleague Andrew Barr will cover, just wanted to give everybody a brief update on where we are with the process to change the status of the airport from public use to private use. Also, we should have Sarah Jensen from HMMH available today listening in, as we'll explain a lot of the discussion around a proposed framework for operating a private use airport relies heavily on their work. framework. So our agenda for today, first, as I mentioned, I'll cover a brief update on the deactivation and activation process for the airport. And we'll cover a proposed secret study phase and data collection implementing a PPR framework at the new airport. As I mentioned, we were directed by the town board to look at options for a PPR framework that was informed by the various studies over the last year or so and the public input that we've received to date. A number of approaches, of course, out there that can be implemented, and we've tried to select some options or advise you on some options that make sense for the new airport. Next slide, please, Andrew. So as we've talked about before, we've been engaged in a long process that's been led by members of the town board to discuss the change in status of the airport. That discussion continues. We are in regular contact with the FAA for the change in status. As we all recognize, this is quite a unique situation. So as issues arise, we're working cooperatively to try to address them given the novel circumstance and the change of status of the airport. We amended those dates a couple of weeks ago in close consultation with the FAA, and based on the new updated timeline of a May 17th closure, we don't see any obstacles in meeting these new dates. And I think the sentiment is both the FAA and the town are committed to delivering a safe new airport with as many operational capabilities as possible. We do anticipate that in light of the revised timeline, nearly all capabilities will be available upon opening. We can talk about the instrument procedures issue as I go through the list on the next slide. So the new revised date for the deactivation of the current East Hampton Airport is May 17th at 11:59 p.m. That date was selected to align with the timeline requested by the FAA, and the closure period is intended to present the least disruption to people who use the airport and will intend to use the new airport after the status is changed to private use. Once the airport is deactivated, starting at midnight on May 17th, all air navigation facilities will be unavailable. That's your runways, your taxiways, your navigational aids, so on and so forth. Again, in close consultation with the FAA and based on assurances that we've received that as many capabilities as possible will be available, the new airport will be activated on May 19th at 9 a.m. in the morning. This also coincides with the FAA's charting cycles. So essentially, there will be a seamless transition as far as that goes with respect to the East Hampton Airport that's currently in operation and your new airport. And that was certainly something that the town was interested in accommodating at the request of the FAA. When the new airport is activated, we do expect nearly all capabilities to be available except the instrument procedures. We're working very hard on those, as you know, in close coordination with the FAA and various third parties to assist us in getting those in place as soon as possible. And we do think it will be implemented hopefully at the end of May at the earliest, and certainly sometime over the 2022 summer season. Just some specifics in the work that we've completed so far in the process in close coordination with the FAA. What we're expecting are a couple of things. There will be a new identifier for the airport. That's called a Loc ID. That has been set aside for you by the FAA while it is undergoing its airspace study, which we expect to be completed soon as well. All of communication aids will be available. There's one piece of equipment that you're in the process of acquiring, which is a ground communication outlet. Jim Brundage is working to secure that, and that should be very straightforward. We've worked to ensure the continued use of the frequencies that are currently available at the airport. We expect that there will be communication capability when the airport is reactivated with seamless, again, no disruption. All weather aids will be available. The town already owns the AWAS system, and we'll also be through the process of recertifying that for use at the new airport come May 19th. All of the navigational aids at the airport will be available, except for one nav aid. All that equipment was already owned by the town, except for the runway end lights for runway 10. And so we're working through an agreement to obtain those runway end lights from the FAA prior to the activation of the new airport. And as in years past, in seasons past, the airport will have a tower, and that will open on the same schedule that it has in the past, which is the Saturday before Memorial Day. So all systems go here, and we expect all of these capabilities to be available come May 19th. So what I'll do here is I'll turn this summary over to my colleague Andrew Barr to walk through some options for proposed PPR framework in connection with the secret study. I know Lisa and Dan are going to talk about that more when we're done. This really goes hand in hand in terms of what's actually going to be studied over this coming summer season. So with that, I'll turn it over to Andrew.
Thanks, Bill, and thanks, Town Board. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, Andrew.
Great, thanks, Peter. So as Bill mentioned, in subsequent discussion and presentation today, we'll make more clear the proposed PPR is an element of the SECRA study phase that'll be happening over the 2022 season. And it's important to keep it in that context that this is about collecting real-time data about the airport, something we could never do in the past and wouldn't be able to do without the PPR being available. The goal is to collect the actual data as opposed to speculate or model. We've modeled in the past. HMMH has helped us with that with the feasibility study. Other community interest groups have done something similar, but no one has the option to actually collect real data up until now. And that's the point of the 2022 season and the study phase that we're talking about. The benefit of the PPR and the reason that we suggest the PPR is it'll provide maximum flexibility for the town board moving forward, not only to react to things that happen or unintended consequences for the community, but also for neighboring communities. So it'll provide the town with the ability to look at what happened over the season and in the process of having the final GEIS, which AKRF will talk about later today, make some changes and look at the PPR to make sure it's maximizing the impact that the town board is intending. This initial framework is just a proposal, and it's subject to comment from the community and stakeholders, and AKRF will explain the exact process that will be receiving public comment, the time period for comment, and all of those logistical aspects, because this is, as I mentioned, part of the SECRA study. At the end of the season, the consultants will get together and put together the draft GEIS that'll be circulated for public comment. And that's the point where the town board can start actually finalizing what a PPR might look like. But again, even if that does occur, there will be the inherent flexibility of PPR for the town board to use for future. So I think it's important to start this just because of things that have been said in the media, and I think some of the larger fears that aviation stakeholders may have had, to talk about what the PPR framework isn't. This is not a ban on any type of aircraft. This is not a ban on any particular operator. We are not trying to make this just a local club. Instead, what we're suggesting is a balanced approach that will reflect what the community is willing to have at the airport, but at the same time, keep the airport open for business and ensure that aviation interests and aviation stakeholders can still access the East End in a safe way. In order to do that, we have several permissions that we're suggesting that will work together in a larger matrix, allowing that community interest and aviation stakeholder balance to be met. There are in the future going to be some rules and regulations in an updated town code section that will also impact operations at the airport. But the PPR is going to be the largest piece of those rules and regulations in terms of how operational decisions are made at the airport. And a lot of what we'll be talking about moving forward is not going to focus on general aviation or the GA operators. And I think it's important to state right at the outset, a typical GA operator is going to have blanket permissions to operate at the airport in non-curfew hours. So because this is a local airport in a smaller community, it should reflect that with the way that the operations occur. And to that end, GA operators should have the ability to operate at the airport with very little difference than what they're doing today. A couple other points. This PPR framework is going to be addressed post-operation, meaning that we're not relying on the FAA or air traffic controllers to provide permissions for aircraft coming and going to the airport. Instead, the way that TRACON or the air traffic control organizations will operate is the same as they operate today. And if someone does violate the PPR, the town will address that after the fact through an enforcement mechanism available to the town. The PPR does not apply to public, military, or emergency operations, and that's almost should go unstated. But of course, if there's an emergency need for the helicopter to come, in the middle of the night, of course that can happen. There will be no issues from a PPR standpoint. And over the next few slides, I'm going to be explaining the specific permissions that the town should consider, or that we think the town should consider. If the town looked at all of them together and went forward with something along the lines I'm suggesting, the PPR would impact approximately 40% of operations compared to historical data, and would address upwards of 70% of complaints. And one thing I do want to highlight for everyone looking at these numbers in real time, some of these percentages that you're going to see over the next few slides are addressing the exact same operation. So it isn't something you can just add all the percentages together to see how complaint data would be affected or operational data would be affected. I think that's an important caveat, and something that if there are questions, HMMH can explain in further detail the overlaps between the various permissions. So the first is a time-based permission, another way of saying a curfew. We suggest on weekdays, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., and on weekends and holidays, 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. We've heard lots of public comment about the need to have a peace and quiet on the weekend mornings and weekend evenings, and that's why we've created a slightly shorter set of permissions for weekends and holidays. Other things that the town board has looked at would just be an 8 to 8 or a sunset to sunrise type of permission. But after looking at the numbers with HMMH, it made the most sense to us to think about the weekdays being 8 to 8 and weekends 9 to 7, because that impacts only 13% of operations, but they're some of the most complained about operations. Almost 40% of complaints are those early morning or late night operations, and a curfew, as described here, would address almost all of those concerns. We also suggest an operator-based permission. An operator would be the entity or individual operating the aircraft. So another way of thinking about the operator would be the pilot or the company running that particular aircraft. And in order to do this, we suggest a 1 daily round trip permission, meaning that every commercial operator, and I'll define that in a second, can come to the airport once per day. In order to define commercial, we're talking about Part 135 flights. These are your commuter flights. These are flights that an individual is paying someone else to fly them to or from the airport. As a practical matter, this is nearly all helicopters, jets, or seaplanes coming or going from the airport. So the goal here is to reduce the frequency on the very heavy days, because that is when there's been the most pain points for community and community members. But at the same time, this would allow all of the operators to come and go once based on a registration number. So if the operator has 2 aircraft, they can come twice, once with each aircraft per day. We can track this and enforce this with the Vector system that's already in place at the airport. And Vector does have the ability to create software that will alert the town board and the airport director if there is a violation of this. So there'll be real-time data for the town board if there is a violation of the 1 daily round trip. I'll talk about other alternatives in a second, because it'll be related to the noise-based permission as well. But if the town board did look at just a 1 daily round trip permission, it would impact 13% of operations, a quarter of the commercial operations that we've seen historically, and about 35% of complaints. And as the town board and the community is well aware, most of the commercial operations occur in the season. And there are days where the same aircraft has come 6 or 7 times in a particular day. And under this type of permission, that aircraft would be limited to 1 per day. So on the busiest days of the year, the town would get the most relief with this type of permission. A noise-based permission, if, as the community will likely recall, in 2015, the town introduced local laws, one of which dealt with noisy aircraft. And at that time, the town spent a lot of time and energy thinking about what that noise level should be. And on the town website, there are lists of aircraft that would be impacted by this 91.0 decibel limit. And we suggest keeping that limit because the aircraft technology is largely the same as it was 6 years ago in terms of noise. Assuming the town board does that, we could have objective standards for the town board and the airport director to use. This isn't something where a particular pilot or operator could manipulate their noise by flying louder or more friendly. We've tried that in the past, and it wasn't always effective. So we're suggesting an objective standard based on FAA published noise guidelines. If an aircraft is not included in that list because the FAA list is not comprehensive, the presumption is that the aircraft is noisy unless they can show the airport director that they aren't. And what we're trying to do there is establish that 1 round trip per day for these aircraft unless they can come in and affirmatively show that they are not noisy. Again, Vector can set up automatic alerts for the town board and for the airport director if there's a violation of this noise-based permission. And that's one of the benefits of having an objective standard. Just to be clear, if you take the operator-based permission and the noise-based permission together, if one aircraft qualifies as both noisy and commercial, it only gets 1 round trip per day. It isn't as if they can double dip because they fit into 2 categories. The impact of this, if we did it, would be 6% of operations. It would eliminate 11% of noisy ops, but it would address 20% of complaints. So this is really targeted to aircraft that may not fall within the commercial operator category, but still are especially inconvenient on the community based on noise. And limiting them to 1 round trip per day would hopefully balance that community interest with the ability to still come and go from the airport. So here's the alternatives that were considered both for the operator and noise-based permissions. We also looked at 1 round trip per weekend and 1 round trip per week. Those were The one round trip per weekend was very similar in terms of how it would impact operations and complaints. And the one round trip per week actually didn't have a whole lot of difference either, simply because there aren't all that many flights between Monday and Thursday. I know that we've discussed these with the board several times, and you've looked at some of the data that HMMH put together. And Cooley's recommendation, and what I understand the town board to be most interested in, is offering the operators one round trip per day, simply because it does seem to balance the interest that we've been talking about the most. One other alternative that can be considered is using a different sound level, but based on discussions with the town and with the airport director, the 91.0 decibel level seems to be a good starting point for discussion. There's a size-based restriction. So this is to keep the largest of the large jets from impacting the community. As the town board has been discussing, and as the community made very clear in the engagement session, some of the issue with the airport is simply the size of some of these aircraft flying so close to people's homes. To that end, we look at a max takeoff weight limit, and we suggest 50,000 pounds as a max takeoff weight. The value of looking at takeoff weights is just like the noise standard. This is an objective standard that's published by the FAA. And if we look at 50,000 pounds, generally speaking, for the community's reference point, that's a jet that's designed to carry 12 or more passengers. So under this permission, a jet larger than that would not be permitted to use the airport. The added benefit of doing this is it preserves the lifespan of the airport itself, with the town now having to foot the full cost of operating the airport and trying to keep this self-sustaining. Thinking about preservation of runways and taxiways becomes an important metric. And 50,000 pounds is seems to be big enough for the airport users to continue accessing the airport in a meaningful way, but at the same time keeps the large to large jets away. This only impacts 2% of operations and 1% of complaints, but those 2% of operations are going to be the most burdensome on the airport. The alternatives we looked at were just different takeoff weights. So if you had a max takeoff weight of 25,000 pounds, it would be approximately a jet of 8 seats, and 40,000 pounds, approximately 10 seats. Having discussed this with the town board and the HMMH, the noise consultants, we suggest starting at 50,000 pounds, and we can always bring that lower if it doesn't address the issue felt by the community. And this is just a preview for what's to come. Obviously, the town is very focused on environmental issues, and as part of the long-term operation, so looking down the road, the town is going to phase out or sunset lead-based fuel sales. And then subsequent to that, lead-based fuel utilizing aircraft. So we'll go to a pure E aircraft, whether it's an electric helicopter, electric aircraft, eVTOL, whatever it might be. As the town board is aware, the FAA announced just last week that by 2030, they're hoping to have all general aviation aircraft on a non-fossil fuel and a non-lead-based fuel. And the town board has not come to any decisions on exact timing. We've had a lot of discussions on how to make sure that this environmental aspect is contemplated with the new airport, but these types of permissions will be coming, but at the current time, they don't have a specific season they'll be introduced. And then a couple other cleanup items. These are all things that are already true at the current airport or were suggested by the airport director as increasing the efficiency and safety of the airport. No ultralight vehicles, no banner towing, no skydiving, no stage 1 or stage 2 jets, and no touch and go operations. In terms of enforcement, as previewed at the beginning, there's going to be a rules and regulations that the town board has been working pretty hard on putting together and thinking through exactly what that'll look like. The rules and regulations will not only have the operational rules and the use rules for the airport, they also do create an enforcement mechanism where the town board and the airport director retain the right to suspend or restrict the use of the airport for any particular violator of the PPR. The town also has local, county, and state laws to use at their discretion if the nature of the violation is such that it would warrant either a more significant fine or some type of other enforcement mechanism. And all of this enforcement protocol that the town board is considering in the rules and regulations is part of the routine or continuing agency management. So from a secret perspective, thinking about how this enforcement is going to play in, these are the types of things that the town board does all of the time and would therefore not fall into the secret framework. And that'll be discussed more in subsequent discussions today. So with that, turn it over to the town board for any questions or comments. My understanding is that HMMH is available if helpful to the town board. Otherwise, we very much appreciate your time and look forward to continuing to work with the community to finalize the 2022 study phase rules.
Thank you, Andrew. Do any of the board members have questions at this point? Okay, and again, I want to go back to the general public for questions or comments at the end of our work session discussion of the airport. At this point, I think we could go on to the next topic, which is the new airport revised EAF negative secret declaration. Do we have Lisa LaCourie in the waiting room?
Yes, we do, and she's being admitted right now.
Thank you, Jason.
Hello, Lisa. Are you there?
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Good.
Here she is. Welcome, Lisa. Good morning.
Good morning. Before getting into the scoping session, we have another thing that we need to take care of with CPR, which is the amended resolution about changing the dates. And if you recall, you had gone through the secret review of that resolution that you adopted back in January. And now that you're changing the time period, I went back over to look and see if there'd be any harmful effects on the environment, and I'm going to advise that you issue a new secret declaration. So similar to the original action, the amended action will not result in any direct physical changes or improvements to natural features, facilities, or infrastructure. The duration of time during which there'd be no airport available has been reduced from 3 days, which was part of the original action, to 33 hours. So as a result, it would be even easier for aircraft operations to adjust their schedules to fly on the day before or the day after the closure. And the short duration of time is similar to what is when airports have regular maintenance practices, which may require airports to be closed. The original closure dates are proposed to be delayed by about 2.5 months from March to May. Activities are generally higher in May, but when we examined the particular date, 10 days before Memorial Day on a Wednesday, we found that they were generally fairly low. And we looked at the 6 most recent years of activity for this particular day and found on average there were approximately 41 flights, with about 68% of them locally based. And locally based, you would expect that those aircraft are going to choose to make changes to their schedules and fly the day before or the day after rather than go to a different airport. But I just wanted to compare that to an average day in the peak season in July, that 41 flights represents only about 10% of the peak activity that the airport might experience on a day in July. We did again look at the potential diversion of aircraft if this did happen, if this closed for 33 hours at the surrounding airports, and found that there was ample capacity at these airports to accommodate potential diversion. We also examined potential impacts on roadways if diversion occurred, if the passengers switched to different airports or switched to ground vehicles, and also found negligible impacts on that infrastructure. Finally, the amended date for opening the airport, the FAA expects to have all-weather navigational and communication facilities currently available upon activation, with the exception of the instrument flight procedures that may or may not be available at that date. So we examined what the published weather data has been for a couple of years, 2019 and the first half of 2021, and found that on average, instrument weather conditions existed for about 10% of the time. Therefore, 90% of the time, visual flight rules would apply, and the lack of instrument procedures would not be expected to affect the aircraft at the new airport. So in short, we found no significant adverse environmental impacts, and we recommend a negative declaration pursuant to SECRA.
Thank you, Lisa. Any questions or comments from board members about the SECRA deck? Okay, I guess we can go on then to the final discussion of the scoping for the draft environmental impact study. And again, at the end of this section of discussion, we will go back to the phones and hear from the public on specific comments regarding these discussions.
Hi, good afternoon. And if it goes on, if we could let him on to the
Russo
meeting. Yes.
Okay, thank you. There was a small break up there, and I heard part of the name, but not all of it.
Yeah. Great.
Okay.
All right, he's in. Oh, and Daniel, could you please mute the YouTube in the background?
Good morning, Dan.
Good morning.
Welcome, both of you.
Good morning. So my name is Peter Farreau from the firm AKRF. We're retained by the town to assist with the environmental review. And so if it's all right, I'll share my screen and a quick presentation on the DGEIS scoping session, which is at present. So obviously we're looking at the long-term operations at the new airport. As Lisa has just described, the town board had previously looked at the potential environmental impacts associated with deactivating and reactivating, found no potential significant adverse impacts, and presented findings today as to any potential for a change in that determination based on the new dates. And Lisa, as reported, didn't find any potential for that. So looking forward to the long-term operations, as Bill and Andrew had presented earlier, the town's considering a reduction in flight operations based on the PPR framework, which could include and is recommended to include time-based, aircraft-based, noise-based, and operator-based permissions, as well as potentially environmental-based permissions as well. As the PPR is a discretionary action of the town board must comply with the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act, which requires environmental study of those discretionary actions, specifically requires that the town takes a hard look at the potential environmental impacts. And SECRA, as you know, has prescribed steps to ensure in thorough environmental review, public participation, and an examination of alternatives. So in this case, the first couple SECRA steps were undertaken by the board previously, which was to classify the action as an unlisted action pursuant to SECRA, complete the environmental assessment form, parts 1, 2, and 3, with a supplemental narrative, And the town board, based on those reports, found that there was a potential for the implementation of a PPR to have a significant adverse environmental impact. Because of that determination, the town issued what's referred to as a positive declaration under seeker, and it found that a full-time implementation of a PPR could have potential significant adverse impacts in the following areas. So increased noise at what we're going to term the affected airports, Montauk, Southampton Heliport, Gabreski, that might see diverted flights, change in the number of flight operations, time, type, frequency, resultant changes in vehicular traffic patterns in and around the affected airports, as well as potential changes in mode of travel from air travel to vehicular travel. And then kind of those cumulative impacts on community character surrounding those airports as a result of the number of flight operations, noise, traffic patterns, etc. The positive declaration also identified other potential impacts, such as air quality and greenhouse gas emissions, and potential impacts to noise-sensitive wildlife. Upon this finding of a positive declaration pursuant to state seeker regulations, an environmental impact statement, or EIS, is required. And what we're proposing is a generic environmental impact statement, or a GEIS, which allows municipalities in this case to evaluate a program that has a range of alternatives and be able to do it within the seeker context. So in general, the EIS process has several steps with public participation throughout. The first was the publication of a draft scope, a GEIS scope, which was published by the town board on February 17th. Today is a public scoping session where comments are received on that draft scope. Written comments are also accepted on the draft scope through March 18th. Based on feedback from those public comments, the town board will issue a final scope for the GEIS and then undertake the preparation of that generic environmental impact statement in accordance with the adopted scope. Town board would review it, review that draft GEIS, and require any changes that be made to ensure that the scope was fulfilled, and then would publish that GEIS and accept public comments, again with a public hearing, written public comment period, which is anticipated hopefully in late fall of this year. The town board would then undertake preparation of a final generic environmental impact statement, which would include a response to substantive comments from the public and other stakeholders. And based upon that environmental record, the town board would adopt what's known as a finding statement, which would summarize the environmental impacts and the mitigation and set forth the town's rationale for a decision on permanently implementing the PPR. Once seeker is concluded, then the town is free to take action on permanently adopting a PPR. So today, the town board is accepting comments on the scope for the GEIS. And basically the scope is the outline, the table of contents for what should be studied. And so we're looking for feedback from the public on what should be studied in the EIS and the methodology by which those studies should be conducted. As we said, that scope was published on February 17th. It's available on the town's website. And I'll just give some brief highlights, an overview of what's included in that scope. At its base, the GEIS is going to compare the flight operations during this study period in the peak season of 2022 to historical flight operations. So we're going to look at the number of operations at the new airport compared to previous operations. And we're going to do the same for the other affected airports as we spoke about before, which is Montauk, Gabreski, and the Southampton Heliport. We'll look at the number of operations and to the extent the information is available, the type of operations, type of aircraft, the time, frequency, and really get a handle on what those changes and potential diversions were. We know that the desktop diversion studies, as Andrew had spoken about, are limited. There's a lot of complex factors that go into an individual's choice on how and when to fly. And so in order to get the best data available to make the most informed decision, it was recommended that a temporary PPR be implemented to study these impacts in the most rigorous and kind of real world way. And we also want to have enough of a study period to understand trends and make sure we avoid data noise, which could very well happen if the PPR study period were too short. In that study period would affect travel patterns in and of itself, which is obviously not what we want to see. So as Andrew mentioned, to facilitate the GEIS, temporary PPR restrictions would be put into place to allow for the needed environmental analysis. And so in the GEIS, after that discussion of flight operations and diversions, we'd be looking at the potential impacts that those changes in operations had. And we start off with kind of land use and community character in and around the 4 airports, and how that character could be changed and impacted based on the number of flights, noise, vehicular traffic conditions. We'd look at aircraft noise, compare 2022 data with historical data. We know that there are many ways to look at aircraft noise, some of which are applicable, some of which don't really get at the true impact. So we're going to look at it in a number of different ways, on a yearly basis, kind of during the peak season basis, a peak weekend basis, to really try and get a handle on what the actual impacts are to this community and to the communities surrounding the other airports. We'll compare vehicular data counts from 2022 to past years. Do people choose not to fly and to drive, and does that shift have a potential to affect traffic patterns, vehicular noise, air quality? Would changes in flight patterns affect vehicular traffic patterns surrounding the airports? And those are the questions we'd be looking to answer. We'd also be studying impacts on energy usage, air quality, climate change, from both the flight operations as well as the traffic patterns. And then inherent in any EIS presumed by seeker, and a big part of it, is an analysis of alternatives to the proposed action. And so we would study the potential impacts of the no action alternative. Obviously, there's a lot of good data out there. A lot of data out there about the operations of the airport and what continuing as the status quo, what impact that would have. We would look at kind of the other end of the spectrum, from the no action spectrum to the other end of the spectrum, which would be if there was a full closure of the new airport. And again, really looking to kind of bound the potential impacts of a range of alternatives so that the town board has the best information available with which to make a decision. And then we look at impacts of alternative restrictions and kind of changes in the PPR framework, as Andrew had spoke about earlier. So the next steps, really today, what we're looking for is public comment on the draft scope for the GEIS. We are welcoming your comments orally today. Comments are also accepted in writing through March 18th. You can email to a dedicated email address that's on the slide right now, ehamptonscope@ehamptonny.gov, or in the mail to the town clerk's office. So with that, I'm going to conclude my presentation and turn it back over to you.
Thank you very much, Peter. Are there any questions or comments from board members at this point? Okay, then what I'd like to do is to go to the phone lines, and Again, we're asking for comments to be directed specifically to the topics we've just been discussing. And keep your comments to 3 minutes or less, please. And be sure to mute your devices in the background so we don't get feedback. So, Jason, do we have any callers on the line?
Yes, we do, and I will unmute the first caller now. Hello, caller ending 4477. You're on the air. Hello.
Hello, and good afternoon, Mr. Van Scoyoc and the board members. My name is Alex Kurtz, and I'm Director of Airports at the National Business Aviation Association, NBAA. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to call in from Washington, D.C. For those of you who may not be familiar, NBAA represents over 11,000 member companies and professional members who operate all types of aircraft as part of their business or are involved with business aviation in various ways. Our members include numerous tenants and users of the East Hampton Airport. I would like to begin my remarks by once again acknowledging your recent efforts on the path to preserve the airport. I know this is not easy. I would also like to applaud your decision to delay the transition. This gives us additional time to further explore our options as we define the future of the airport. As you know, NBAA is very much concerned about the flawed plan to close HTO and reopen a new airport. This path is plagued with both legal and logistical issues. While the FAA has given the town a path for the conversion to private use, the agency has not yet opined if the statutory obligations can be extinguished and if other regulations that prevent restrictions can be circumvented. We're all working towards the same goal, to ensure a strong, viable future for the airport and its compatibility with surrounding communities. Thus, we caution the town going down this path of conversion to private use, especially since the ability to put in restrictions has not yet been provided. Again, the aviation community recognizes that more can be done and believe that by joining forces, we can find solutions where the airport can continue to serve the East End of Long Island while also being a quieter neighbor to the surrounding residents and retaining its important economic role in the region. We believe this path is possible through the current framework that is already in place without the need to make the conversion to private use and to put in restrictions. These restrictions will greatly impact neighboring communities and airports without providing meaningful relief for the communities surrounding East Hampton. Again, in order to accomplish this, we urge the board to abandon the current path that jeopardizes the future utility of the airport and to withdraw the Form 7480 associated with closure and reopening of the airport. Let's collaboratively come together to develop solutions working with the FAA, joined by the aviation community and the airport neighbors. We also recognize that the town of East Hampton wants to be a good neighbor to the surrounding communities and airports that will feel the impacts of the diverting traffic and can help to find ways to achieve that. Thank you for your time and all the effort you're dedicating to the airport. NBA and its members are here to support you and the airport staff on a collaborative path.
Thank you for taking the time to call today, Alex.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you, board members. We appreciate your time and attention.
Okay, be well.
All right.
Jason, can we go to the next caller?
Absolutely. Hello, caller ending 8784. You were on the air. Hello. Hello, caller ending 8784. You were on the air. Hello. Okay, I'm going to unmute next caller. We'll cycle back. Hello, caller ending 4937. You were on the air. Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you. My name is Barry Raybeck. I'm the director of the Coalition to Transform East Hampton Airport. I'd like to say good morning to the board. Thank you for this opportunity. It's interesting that the FAA weighed in first. I think it's important to recognize that the FAA, which is supposed to be a federal agency, really functions more as a lobbying organization for aircraft users. And again, they're sending all kinds of mixed messages. Our goal remains closure. You're talking about meaningful restrictions in terms of noise, volume, and pollution. And board members have said publicly that if we cannot have meaningful restrictions, then closure is necessary. The proposed curfew hours are not a curfew, okay? A curfew must be for the benefit of the community, not the airporters, for it to be meaningful. Having quality outdoor time in summer is a huge part of this whole thing. And that means times when people enjoy their terraces, pools, and decks during mornings and evenings need to be free of aircraft overhead. The best of this worst case, meaning it's still open, scenario is no commercial operations of helicopters, jets, or seaplanes, and no private operations of helicopters either. Limits of aircraft per hour, which I see you're limiting sort of per day, but they should be limits of per hour, and it's peak times and some sort of a slot system perhaps. Serious curfews, such as 4 p.m. to 10 a.m., limiting use to 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. or less on some or all days. How about no aircraft at all on Saturdays? No leaded fuel used or sold, not in the future, right now. There's lead contamination at the airport. Lead kills us. We have to get rid of leaded fuel, not at some remote time. How about closure when it's too dangerous, which has been completely ignored by helicopters as they fly in at treetop level, and so they can maybe see the ground. Let's see. General aviation people are exempt from a curfew. That's not a curfew if people are exempt from it. Noise is the only pollution that you're really talking seriously about, other than maybe the future addressing lead. What about air pollution, carbon emissions? What about the climate crisis? Okay? And as aircraft proliferate, limiting it to one a day is not going to be helpful if there's twice as many aircraft. So you've done just what we feared. The airporters, in many cases, suffer nothing. The community continues to suffer a great deal. With all due respect, this is a weak, nearly pitiful response to the problem. In the face of the accelerating climate crisis, East Hampton continues to support planetary destruction. Thank you.
Thanks for calling, Barry. And just one point of correction. I don't believe the GA aircraft would be exempt from the hours of curfew.
Okay, I will move on to the next caller. Hello, caller ending 0431. You're on the air. Hello?
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, hi. This is Catherine Sly, local resident and local pilot. I'm concerned that you've drafted the proposed PPR rules to ban, restrict, and eliminate small local airplanes at HTO. Cooley's presentation claims that the general aviation will have blanket permissions, but the details of your PPR rules show that as being inaccurate and misleading. And in fact, 4 of your PPR rules are specifically designed to hurt local pilots and ground locally based airplanes at HTO. The first one is the curfews. The imposition of a 9 a.m. curfew on weekends is only designed to ground small local planes because only small local planes are flying in the mornings on the weekends. Little planes like mine don't perform well in strong winds when there's no crosswind runway aligned with the wind. That's why HTO was built with 2 crosswind runways, but the town has closed the main crosswind runway of 422 and has left the second crossway runway of 1634 to fall into disrepair. So we're left having to fly only when the winds are calm or very light, which is almost exclusively first thing in the morning. You knew this, and we've told you this several times, but you still chose to impose this or recommend this 9 a.m. curfew. So it's clearly designed to eliminate local small plane usage. You claim that it only affects 13% of the planes that are using it. Well, I'd like to ask the question, how about you tell the community what percentage of those flights that occur before 9 a.m. are actually locally based aircraft? Give us that percentage, because it's probably over 90%. That's who you're banning. So why not consider extending the curfew time for small, locally based planes, maybe a little extra time in the morning, since they're not the aircraft that are generating the complaints? Second concern I have is about your noisy aircraft ban. Why is the noisy aircraft ban drafted to negatively impact small local piston planes at HTO? Your PPR rule requires that all planes must have an EPN dB rating of less than 91 and be found in the AC 36-1H list, or they will be, quote, presumed noisy until proven otherwise by demonstrating their EPDMB level through their original manufacturer's manual. Well, as you know from our mini discussions back in 2015, EPN DB levels only apply to staged aircraft, meaning jets and turboprops. It is not calculated for unstaged aircraft, meaning little piston propeller planes. In fact, there is no such thing as an EPN DB rating for small piston propeller planes. It simply doesn't exist. So the AC36-1H list does not contain EPN DB numbers for small piston propeller planes. While the list does have some alternate noise information for a tiny handful of some newer piston planes, most of the small planes are not included on that list because they are unstaged aircraft and automatically are not considered noisy. So as a result of your new PPR ban, all the little yellow Huskies and Cubs, the historic Grummins, the little old tailwheel Cessnas, the Waco and Pitts biplanes at East Hampton Airport are now all going to be lumped in as noisy aircraft and banned, simply because they're not on the AC36-1H list. In fact, virtually every airplane that was at Just Plain Fun Day, all of the airplanes that belong to the Bonnet chapter of the Commemorative Air Force, all the historic warbirds who come and celebrate 4th of July at HTO every year, and in fact, even that adorable little Yerkoop that Santa showed up in at the holiday party this past December will now all inaccurately be classified as noisy aircraft and banned, simply because they're not on the AC36-1H list and no EPNDB exists for them. So why not modify your PPR noisy aircraft ban to only apply to staged aircraft? Third issue is the leaded fuel ban. Now, we would like to know basically when are you going to wait until unleaded fuel becomes commercially and fleet-wide available, install a new tank for it, and buy a new fuel truck for it? Or are you planning on following the two airports in California who prematurely banned it before any fleet-wide unleaded fuel is commercially available, thereby effectively doubling the number of unleaded fuel flights that are currently happening at the airport because now pilots have to fly to other airports to get fuel and then come back? As you know, there's currently no fleet-wide unleaded fuel available in the world. And the only two locations that have a current version are over 100 miles away from East Hampton Airport, making it impossible to use. Every single local pilot in the area and small plane pilots around the world are incredibly eager for new unleaded fuels to be made available to our aircraft. We will be the first in line to use it, but we just don't want the town to ban us from using our own home airport before that fuel is available. Your presentation admitted that, and it's currently on your Q&A statement on the town website where you actually admit that it's not a limitation in the fuel you're planning on doing, but you're calling for, quote, the elimination of leaded fuel consuming aircraft, unquote. That's not a phasing out of leaded fuel. That's a ban on all leaded fuel consuming aircraft. And currently, every single small locally based piston plane at the East Hampton Airport is a leaded fuel consuming aircraft because there is currently no fleet-wide commercially available unleaded fuel. So we're basically asking that why not modify your PPR leaded fuel ban to just simply not be imposed until the fleet-wide unleaded piston plane fuel becomes commercially available, across the entire fleet, since it's only going to be a couple of years. Banning the planes now is just going to require more operations. And the last one I wanted to bring up is your touch-and-go plan. I have just this last one. Thank you. The PPR on the touch-and-go on your touch-and-go operations. Jets don't do touch-and-goes. Helicopters don't do touch-and-goes. Turboprops and seaplanes don't do touch-and-goes. The only planes that do touch-and-goes are small, local airplanes. Touch-and-goes are a necessary and critical part to flight training and for maintaining pilot currency. We're required to do a certain number of them in order to maintain currency under FAA rules. If you ban the touch-and-goes at the airport, basically now that's going to require us to do a full stop, a taxi back, additional 5 minutes, burning fuel the entire way. This leaded fuel you're so concerned about, you're now requiring us to burn more of it instead of doing touch-and-goes, or just not be current on our skills. You claim these restrictions are based upon recent studies and reports, but where is a single shred of data showing that touch-and-go operations are a problem or a concern in the community? Where is the data that sets forth the number of complaints about touch-and-goes, and how are you quantifying this supposed problem? How many touch-and-goes are even performed at HTO? You haven't presented any of this data, yet you are immediately eliminating touch-and-goes, which are a critical flight training skill, aircraft performing touch and goes don't operate for more than a mile from the airport. There is no major flight school at HTO. So why is this being banned? So again, I would just ask that maybe the town reconsider not banning touch and goes because it's exclusively directed at small local planes and it is designed to eliminate flight training for young people in our community who want to become new pilots. So just in closing, I would just ask that the town stop and reconsider some of these PPR rules and their impacts. Perhaps maybe that you didn't realize these impacts on how adversely it's going to impact the local pilot community and small planes at our historic 85-year-old airport. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. We appreciate your perspective on small planes. And just want to say, we're not talking about banning. There were restrictions that would apply to the noise levels. And again, if you can demonstrate that the aircraft is below that level, then it wouldn't be required to meet those regulations. But we do appreciate those comments. We'll take into consideration. And again, we will be taking public comment through 4 p.m. on March 18th on these proposed PPR framework. Jason, do we have any other callers on the line?
Yes, we do. Moving on to the next caller. Hello, caller ending 2650. You are on the air. Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes.
Hello. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm new at this. My name is Lorraine Hayes. I've been a resident of East Hampton for, I guess, almost 50 years now. I listened to the presentation, and I guess I'm very concerned. It seems like such a de minimis change in the operation of the airport from what was originally operable and causing such noise, pollution to the entire community. I tried to take a couple of notes. The fuel situation, I guess you're going to continue with the leaded fuel and see what happens with that. So basically, that's no change at all. The size of the weight, okay, the weight size of 50,000 pounds, you indicate that would be a reduction of 2% of the usage. So that means 98% remain. So I don't see that as any meaningful reduction. You have the decimal level, a limit of a noisy aircraft with 91.0 decimal limit, and unless I heard incorrectly or wrote it down incorrectly, that will eliminate 11% of the noisy aircraft operations. So that leaves 89% remaining. So, all right, as far as the weight is 98 remain. As far as the noise, 89% remain. Again, with the once-a-day flights, I thought I heard that will affect 13%. Correct me if I'm wrong. Again, that would leave 87% of the flights. So I have 87%, 89%, 98%. Fuel, no change. As far as the so-called limits of flight or the times of operation, you've got a 12-hour weekday and a 10-hour weekend. Whew, I don't know if that is considered a reduction at all. So in taking the numbers and the extent of the reduction, I don't see how it's much of a reduction. This airport is over the aquafilter. We've got environmental issues above and beyond trying to placate the airport proponents and placating the FAA. That's a futile operation for sure. So I don't understand how this is any kind of a meaningful reduction, I guess is my comment. Are these numbers wrong? Am I getting them wrong?
Well, Lorraine, I think at the beginning of the presentation, it was stated that approximately 40% of the operations and 70% of the complaints would be addressed by the total suite of PPRs. So I do think that's a significant reduction, but You know, we
But if you
will.
break it, oh, sorry to interrupt. If you break it down with the presentation, I mean, if you're going to reduce 2%, that leaves 98. If you're going to reduce 11%, it leaves 89. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a statistician, but I don't see how the 40% comes up with the numbers that were presented. It doesn't seem like a meaningful reduction to which the population of East Hampton is asking for. I know the airport proponents, no, they don't want any reduction, but that's an untenable situation. I'm sorry to interrupt. So I'm sorry.
Oh, that's quite all right. There's a bit of a delay, Lorraine, and we do appreciate you taking the time to comment today.
But you're saying 40% reduction. Is that correct?
In the number of operations, yes, that's what's been suggested by the study.
I know that's still with that number. It leaves 60% of the operations, including leaded fuel. In my opinion, it's not much of a reduction at all. It's a de minimis reduction.
Understood. We appreciate your comments. Yeah.
Okay.
Be well.
Thank you.
I'll unmute next caller. Hello, caller ending 4954. You are on the air. Hello.
Hi there.
Hello. Can you please announce yourself to the board? Thank you.
Certainly. This is Elena Loretto. I'm president of the Noyac Civic Council. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the Noyac Civic Council in Southampton, we are a determined organization focusing mainly on quality of life issues. We have over 500 members. I've been listening to a lot of the persons speak today. It's time to transition to a private town-controlled airport now. You know, we've been given a lot of BS, so to speak, over the years. And, you know, the people of Noyac are fed up. The November route was supposed to help us. Instead, we become the dumping ground for noise. We're your neighbor. I mean, what are you thinking? Southampton, Noyac particularly, is a neighbor on the East End, and it looks like that we're being pushed around, shoved around, and abused. We are not your doormat. Okay, rather than flying over the ocean and having a transition over East Hampton, the November route transitions at the Shinnecock Inlet. Hundreds and thousands of planes are flying over Southampton town. The November route instead protects the estate communities closer to the airport in East Hampton, while creating havoc over highly populated neighborhoods in Hampton Bays, Shinnecock Hills, North Sea, Watermill, North Haven, Bridgehampton, Sag Harbor, and definitely in Noyac. We demand that the November route cease immediately and permanently. You know, have a little compassion. Really. Have all the planes fly over East Hampton only. Eliminate all this noise over Noyac. We can appreciate some of the verbiage that has been said today. Someone, in fact, said, well, you know, we're trying to improve our relations with our neighbors. We want to come up with a collaborative path. Well, I haven't seen any evidence of it. You know, we're diverting the noise. Well, again, you know what? Come to Noyac and you will see that that is not correct. We implore the board of East Hampton to please take immediate steps to stop the noise pollution, the air pollution, all pollution over Noyac from the airport. Thank you very much. I wish you luck with your plan, and I hope you are able to institute this soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elaine. Appreciate you calling.
Okay. Unmuting next caller. Hello, caller ending 5563. You are on the air.
Hi, it's Kelly Bloss from Montauk again. Two questions after hearing the subsequent proposal on PPR. The first is there's a fundamental assumption baked into all this that the airport will be able to be reopened after the short closure period. Do we have assurances from the FAA that there's not going to be any new or any other agency, any new stumbling block to that occurring?
So we feel very confident in speaking with the FAA on nearly a daily basis that there won't be any impediments to us opening the new airport at 9 a.m. on May 19th.
So all of the kind of landmines that they laid out in their letter have been addressed or removed? I mean, what changed?
So a number of things changed. I mean, the FAA wasn't even aware that we owned a lot of the equipment that was currently at the airport. So they listed all sorts of things and procedures and certifications that would have to take place. So we've worked cooperatively with them on that list, and we have addressed the concerns about the timeline. And that was the reason why we decided to move the closure date, was to allow for a little more time, and again for the FAA charting cycle to coincide with the opening of the airport. So we have addressed every one of the concerns raised and are working to accomplish the few remaining things that we need to accomplish. There's a ground communication line that we have to secure equipment for. That's easily accomplished, and they're completing their airspace analysis. We don't expect there to be any issues.
Okay. I guess we'll see, but it sounds like progress has been made. The other comment, Peter, that is the airport would reopen without any IFR capabilities. Will that skew the study that's going to happen because there doesn't appear to be a commitment date for full IFR capabilities?
I don't believe it will skew that. And again, we're not sure at this point whether or not we'll be able to open with the instrument approaches in place, but we expect that they would be completed shortly afterwards, if not upon opening. That issue remains to be seen. But again, that's not an exclusion of aircraft per se. It might affect some aircraft that either by corporate policy or by insurance require an instrument approach at an airport in order to land. But we don't think that's going to affect the majority of aircraft.
Okay, I'll follow up in writing in terms of comments that I've shared earlier and today. I just encourage the board and the consultant hired to engage the experts in aviation, because this is a very, very complex challenge that we're undertaking, and the devil's in the details, and unless you've lived that, you're not going to appreciate the details and care for them. So now is the time to reflect those in the PPR. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Kelly. Appreciate it. And again, written comments can be sent via email to ehamptonscope@ehamptonny.gov, and we'll accept those comments either via email or by snail mail to the town clerk through March 18th at 4 p.m. Do we have any other callers on the line, Jason?
Yes, we do. Unmuting next caller now. Hello, caller ending 1128. You are on the air. Hello.
Yes, hello. This is Andrew Rosenthal, president of Stop the Chop, a bi-state organization. I've spoken to you in the past. We represent thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people in the New York City area who are plagued by helicopter traffic that is headed to or from East Hampton Airport. So I thank you for your perseverance. I hope that this makes some difference. I am quite skeptical, as some of the other callers have said. Your projections are based, I think, on static flight patterns, and I am sure that the industry will figure out, the blades of the world will figure out how to use multiple helicopter tail numbers to basically keep their volumes constant or growing, which is their business plan. So I don't know if you factored that into these projections. I would doubt it, and none of us really know how they're going to be able, how much they're going to be able to do, but I suspect that this will have no impact on them. They'll just rotate different craft. There are so many helicopters in the tri-state area that they could pull in to deliver passengers that I think we're all going to be very disappointed in the net impact of what you've proposed here. You know, again, I think I've brought this analogy up. This airport is the equivalent of a sewage treatment plant pouring millions of gallons of sewage that float down Long Island to New York City and polluting all of the communities along the way. So again, I think you have taken some good steps here, but you really have a moral imperative to close the airport and stop polluting your neighbors. My final comment is, many operators, I would say almost the majority of operators, including virtually all of the commercial charter operators, are now operating with their tail numbers blocked, equivalent of covering over your license plate in a car. I encourage you, I don't know what the legalities, I'm not a lawyer, but I would encourage you to require that all aircraft using the airport, to the extent that they do, not block their tail numbers. And that would enable neighbors to continue to track, and we can figure out who the bad actors are. But in the current environment, with the tail blocking that the FAA is now allowed for virtually anybody who requests it, it makes it very hard for citizens to report the bad actors. So I would encourage the Cooley firm on the board to look into whether they can, in fact, require only operators with their tail numbers published and on public databases, essentially, to fly in and out of the airport so that the bad actors could be identified and then eliminated. Thank you.
Thank you for calling, Andrew. Appreciate your comments. And again, this is a trial period, and this is an initial set of PPR regulations, and we may find that we need to adjust them in order to balance the needs of the community.
Okay. Has anyone talked about the tail number issue? Because that's become a growing problem. You know, several years ago, we could identify bad actors, and now we can't.
So I am not aware of the physical blocking of tail numbers. We actually assess landing fees based on the recording of tail numbers of aircraft that land at the airport. So that would obviously be something we'd be very concerned about, but we'll look into that.
They don't physically block it on the craft itself. They block its publication on things like flight radar. So they still transmit an ADS-B signal. You at the tower are able to identify them, but the public is not able to identify them.
I see. Was not aware of that.
Okay. Yes, it's under. If you Google FAA tail blocking, you'll see the regulations that have been passed in recent years. You know, I think there's been public. You know, Elon Musk had his airplane tracked by some very entrepreneurial college student in Florida recently. That was in the press. So, but you know, he had attempted to block it, and this person was sophisticated enough to get around it. But the general population, your citizens, are not sophisticated enough to figure out when somebody's flying over their house at 200 feet who it is. And so I encourage you. I think if the town said that if you block your ADS-B signal from public databases, you can't land. We want the public to be able to see who it is.
Again, thank you for calling in. We appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
Jason, do we have any other callers on the line?
Yes, we do. Unmuting next caller. Hello, caller ending 8784. You are on the air. Hello? One more time. Caller ending 8784. You're on the air. Hello. Okay. That's the second time I tried that person. Just moving on once again. And let's go to... Hello. Caller ending 2617. You were on the air.
Hi, good afternoon, Peter and board members. This is John Corain, one of your neighbors in the town of Southampton, Sag Harbor. I think probably what you've all heard today is two things that strike me. Is those of us who've been hoping for some relief this summer are skeptical that any of the changes proposed will have any meaningful impact on those of us who get the burden of your airport. The other thing that is apparent is that the aviation industry, while it continues to talk about compromise and working with neighbors, is just absolutely disingenuous. Anything that has been proposed, they're taking shots at. They're not going to go away, either through lawsuit or just constant lobbying. They're going to try to pick away at anything you do. So while I appreciate the tremendous efforts that you have put forth, both in terms of time and money and listening to people, I'm not particularly optimistic that this is really going to matter, what you've put forth today. I ultimately think there's only going to be one solution, and I don't think that this really equates to the significant improvements that many of us had interpreted from earlier board comments. But with that said, I do want to thank you and wish you well in this. I have a feeling that this discussion will be more protracted now than many of us had hoped. I imagine that complaint volumes, while the consultant said they've addressed X percentage of it, which was less than 50%. The fact that planes, the volume of jets that are going to be reduced is only 2%, which has been one of the biggest concerns, is the scale and volume of private jets going in and out. So it seems like there'll be little to no relief there. The thought that commercial aviation would be restricted, that seems to have been compromised away, and I'll agree with what the gentleman from Stop the Chop said. The industry will be able to reroute, they'll work their logistics so that, they'll meet the terms, but it will do nothing to volume. So I got to just tell you, watching today, I started the day optimistic that this would be the start of something good for the season, and I'm coming away from it that there's an opportunity has been lost, that you've had the opportunity to do something bold, and that old saying, snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. That's a little bit what it feels like to me today, but we'll see how it goes, Peter. We'll see how it goes. I think we're going to be we're just going to have a protracted battle. The complaints will still come, and we're just kicking the can down the road. But I wish you all good health and stay strong. The battle goes on.
Thank you, John. I just want to remind everybody, this is just the initial proposal of restrictions. And again, this would be something that could be changed over time. And we are going to continue taking comments from the public, and we appreciate yours.
Thank you, Peter.
Unmuting next caller. Hello, caller ending 8955. You're on the air. Hello.
Hello. Thank you, Peter. This is John Dunning from East Hampton Town. I wanted to suggest two modifications to your proposal. The first is for the touch and goes. The touch and goes for training and for proficiency are critical, and I would like to see some kind of modification for light aircraft that would exempt them from touch and goes, general aviation aircraft. And then the other proposal would be to have different operating hours for general aviation aircraft for takeoff and landing. And the reason is, I think most people agree that the small light aircraft are not the problem, and they contribute very little noise to the surrounding area. So again, touch and goes for small aircraft, and different sets of hours for small aircraft. light aircraft up to 6,000 pounds or something like that, which don't contribute much noise. That's all I had.
Thanks for calling, John. Appreciate those comments.
Okay.
Thank
Moving
you.
on. All right. I'll move on to next caller. Hello, caller ending 4772. You're on the air.
Yeah, hi, this is Tom Ogden in Waynescott. I guess I'll start by saying that, as they say, something is better than nothing. I'm concerned that this isn't much more than that. I haven't had a chance to think through all the details of these preliminary framework of restrictions, but I'm very worried that maybe what says it all is that a climate-smart community can't come up with anything better than restricting jets to 50,000 pounds that can take up to 12 passengers. I have no idea why such a small limit has been imposed. The last thing I'll say is that I don't think that this is going to help out the current board or future boards in terms of reducing the amount of time and energy that gets diverted from all kinds of other serious problems in the town and ends up being spent on this airport. It's going to be a political football for years and years if this current structure is left in place. And to quote a recent editorial in the Star back on February 24th, the only solution is, quote, shut the damn thing down. Thank you.
Thanks for calling, Tom.
And unmuting next caller. Hello, caller ending 3000. You are on the air. Hello.
Good afternoon. Hello. My name is Stephen Krause. I am a resident of Waynescott and a local small craft pilot. Just want to add to what some other people have said about the touch and go situation and maybe give some rationale behind why I believe it should be allowed for the local general aviation aircraft. When an airplane is coming in to land, and forgive me if this seems basic, it is at takeoff speed. It is naturally coming in at a speed high enough to fly. We come in at low power or no power, which is the most quiet phase of flight. We touch down and then add power to resume our flight. If we are forced to come to a full stop, what will happen is we will end up at the far end of the runway. We will have to spend time running our engines, producing pollution, unfortunately, to taxi all the way back to the beginning of the runway, to then wait for our spot, to then have to go full power, which is the most noisy phase of operation, the entire way down the runway as we take off again. So if you're thinking about possibly modifying the touch and go policy, this would be a rationale. It would be better for the environment, and it would be less noise pollution as well as gas pollution for everyone. Another thought is perhaps ban or restrict touch and go traffic that does not originate or is not local traffic, so that you're not encouraging people from Connecticut, flight schools and whatnot to come to the East Hampton area. Thank you for the collaborative effort that I truly feel is going on right now, and we appreciate it.
Thank you for calling, Stephen. We appreciate your comments. Jason, do we have any other callers?
Yes, we do. Unmuting next caller. Hello, caller ending 5337. Oh, hello.
Hi, Jason. This is Bernadette Ruggiero from Sound Aircraft Services.
Hi, Bernadette.
Hi, Peter. Hi, Town Board. I'm just calling in reference to the caller earlier that had spoken about the block tail numbers.
Yes.
So I just wanted to reassure, when we looked back then into a flight tracking system, that we specifically excluded systems that allowed tail numbers to be blocked, and that currently at the airport, we are between the town airport management and our system and the ground tracking, ground cameras, we are utilizing varying systems where we basically, I wouldn't say 100%, but we capture most of the tail numbers and aircraft activity. So I just wanted to give some reassurance back about that.
Appreciate that, Bernadette. I think one of the concerns the caller was expressing was that in-flight tracking, they couldn't tell because of the blocking to the general public of those tail numbers. The public couldn't then verify who might be flying over them, causing noise. I kind of misunderstood what you were saying at first, but that I think was the issue that they were concerned about.
Well, we are concerned about that too, because having an ability to track a tail number properly so we can identify where the aircraft actually flies in and out of is going to be essential in any further evaluation of success of the current plan that is proposed. We are working on another system where also we will be relying on current systems we're already using and cross-referencing, which should give us much more ability to access tail numbers and any other information, and which we're happy to share with the public. And we will make that public so people can actually go online and check who's actually flying over my house and what tail number is that. I do want to just alert, if it's any military public mission, then a lot of times the tail number would be blocked for obvious reasons.
Right, understood. Well, thank you for calling in.
You're welcome, Peter. Have a good one.
You too.
Okay. Unmuting next caller. Bye. Hello, caller ending 2161. You are on the air. Hello.
Yes, hi. Good morning, everyone. I would like to thank the town board for working so hard on this. My name is Pedro. Pedro Curia. I'm a resident of Wainscott. And I would just like to say that I feel a little bit disappointed after seeing this new PPR framework. I feel like the one takeoff and one landing and one takeoff rule for commercial operators is purely an invitation for rule arbitrage with new entities and new aircraft. And I feel like throughout the summer we'll notice that the 40% reduction estimate will be a lot lower than that. So I would just like to mention that, and thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks for calling, Pedro. We appreciate that.
All right. Okay, so on that note, Mr. Supervisor and Town Board, we have no new callers on the line as I currently say this.
Okay, then we will close out the public portion and move on with our next agenda item. And we're going to have a brief discussion about the most recent revisions to the 2022 capital plan. I believe we have Rebecca Hansen in the waiting room. And I want to thank our outside consultants, Andrew Barr, William O'Connor, Dan Rezzo, Lisa LaCourie, and Peter Farreau for joining us and helping us through this discussion on the airport.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you all. Hello, Becky. Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. So I have circulated to the town board what I hope is the final version for the 2022 capital plan that we would like to adopt at this Thursday's meeting. I have outlined a handful of changes to the plan that I'll briefly go through for the benefit of the public. The current version has a total spending of $15,027,455. The town will be retiring $12,705,000 in debt in 2022. And part of this year's plan, which I think is really important, is this entire plan is not being funded by debt service, that the board has agreed to use a portion of its fund balances and other sources to fund this entire plan. So you will notice one of the additions to the plan is the Star Island Dock Rehabilitation Program, which is much needed. The town has submitted a grant application to FEMA, which will cover hopefully 75% of the cost, and the remaining 25% match is being proposed to be covered with funding from the federal government under the American Rescue Plan Act. The plus with using that as the funding source for this project is if the town does not receive the grant, that the ARPA funds will cover the project in its entirety. So, the town would not have to use debt service or borrowing to fund the plan on the off chance you don't receive the FEMA funding. The town board had also agreed that any project that was $25,000 or less, again, would be funded through fund balance. So we've identified those projects on this plan. And so in total, the town will be looking to issue new debt of $12,616,000, which is still less, like I said before, than the amount that you are actually retiring this year by $63,850. So some of the changes to this plan since the presentation at the last work session is funding was added to continue the town's digitization project. One of the main reasons is we are changing the way that we are digitizing records in the assessor's office due to the nature of their paper records. So there's an additional cost there. So we are adding funds to continue the program. We have added a project which was requested last year that needed to be carried over, which are for repairs and maintenance to the life-saving station. We have received an updated quote from Ed Michaels, which is $46,000, which has been included. The amount of money for the body armor through Marine Patrol has been reduced. That was a typo. And again, I've already mentioned the Star Island project, which won't be funded through debt service. And again, hopefully the town will be able to receive 75% of funding through FEMA. If the town board is agreeable to this plan, it can be on for resolution for adoption this Thursday. And then once that is done, we're already in a process with bond counsel to start drafting up the bond authorizing resolutions that will take place over the course of the next few meetings.
Any questions or comments from board members?
No, I just want to say well done, Becky. I think, you know, this protects the town's future, but also looks into outside sources of revenue from grant sources for a lot of our major projects then too, from energy sustainability to also helping our fisheries. So I thank you for working back and forth with the board members on this.
No, not a problem. There's a lot of projects on this year's list.
Yeah, I just want to thank you as well, Becky. A lot of hard work put into preparing this capital plan, a lot of back and forth, and you've managed to help bring it to the point where we're actually still reducing our total indebtedness and not borrowing more than we are retiring in debt, which is a really important thing. And it wasn't necessarily the easiest thing to do this year, but you got us across the finish line where we really want to be. So kudos to you. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. So we'll draft up a resolution and we can adopt this on Thursday.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, everybody.
Great afternoon. And that brings us up to our final discussion, which is South Fork Wind Farm proposed revegetation plan. And I have here that John Jelnicki and Kim Shaw going to present this. Do we have Kim Shaw in the waiting room?
No, I have Mark Abramson and Ray DeBasi. Should I let them both in?
Okay, so Ray DeBias and Mark, please bring them in.
All right.
I don't know if Ray's here for this, but Mark probably is.
Ray's not in for this?
I don't think so. I'm not sure.
Hello, Mark. Welcome.
Oh, his audio's there you go. Hi, Mark.
Hey. Good afternoon, Mark.
How are you?
Good afternoon, everybody. So you're going to bring us through this proposed revegetation plan from South Fork. Can we get some background on this? I believe it was areas that are requiring clearing adjacent to the Long Island Railroad specifically, and there are revegetation plans. A lot of this area, I think, was also hit by southern pine beetles. So
yeah, correct.
Many of those trees have been killed by the pine beetles. So just a little matter of background if you want to fill in the blanks and take us through the proposal.
Okay, I don't know if you want me to bring it up on screen. I'm assuming
it'd be helpful,
okay,
so the public can see what we're talking about.
Okay, just give me 1 second. Okay, so what you see here is the area between Steve Nance Path and Buckskill Road. This is the proposal that was brought to me from Georgia Estates. They proposed just to put in the white pines. I modified it to add additional understory plantings. As you see in this first page here, it specifies, see if I can zoom in, give me 1 second. So it specifies 240 white pines, 8 to 10 feet in height. In addition, 1,200 mixed shrubs throughout the area, and they're going to be on 5-foot centers, and the white pines will be 12-foot centers. The approximate area that's going to be revegetated is just under 30,000 square feet, and these two areas, again, this is just cutting up between St. Nan's Path and Buckskill Road. They're going to be obviously dug. They're going to be they'll be bagged and balled, and they'll remove the bags and planted in those 12-foot centers. Then between these trees will be the mixed shrubs, native shrubs, 5 foot on center. Then those areas will be covered with natural leaf litter of pine needles. Those areas will be supplied with temporary irrigation to make sure the plants are established. And moving forward, we'll see actually when they actually do the digging, if less area is disturbed, we can modify at that point. But as of right now, this is going to be the amount to completely cover a completely denuded area that would be revegetated with the trees and the shrubs. So I'm open up for questions if anybody has any questions regarding this revegetation.
Questions for Mark?
No, I'm appreciative that the design incorporates 8 to 10 feet. I think that will allow the trees to have the greatest amount of allowance to be able to survive based on deer browse and such. And about the numbers of the understory, the 1,200 plants for the understory seems appropriate. So, Mark, I thank you for keeping your eye on this.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yes, I'd like to add that, Mark, I thank you for this plan and the revisions that you made to it. And also just want to mention that in a compliance meeting with South Fork Wind, it was mentioned that there were 300 pine trees impacted by the southern pine beetle along this section. And just to note that number.
Yeah, it's a significant amount, and hopefully these white pines will be able to make it through there. They're not really targeted by the pine beetle. The pine beetle is targeting pitch pines, pretty much specifically.
Yeah, I know that while they do occasionally infect the white pines, they don't seem to kill them. I've had a number of white pines on my property that were also infected. They survived, and thrived, and the pitch pines all died. So in a way, this is kind of fortunate that this reveg plan comes along the same time that we've lost this big swath of pitch pines, over 300 trees here. So
yeah,
reforestation project underway.
Yeah.
What are the other shrubs that are being planted to the species there? The inkberries or bayberries or?
So in the list here, I listed inkberry, northern bayberry, black huckleberry. Those are the most deer resistant and what would be found in the area.
Sure. Okay, that's great. Any other questions or comments? Okay, Mark, we appreciate your work on this. Looks good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Forward with it. That concludes our work session topics of discussion. We have liaison reports now. And Kathy, do you have a report for us?
I do. I have a short one. We have I guess 6 public meetings coming up this Thursday, March 3rd at 2 p.m. And there were 3 that I wanted to highlight. One is to add the Affordable Housing Overlay District over the properties on Route 114, specifically 776, 780, and 782, Route 114. There's also public hearing to amend Chapter 151 of the Special Events Law. We had dedicated a number of work sessions to that topic. And then we are also hoping to hear from the public on amending the Vehicle and Traffic Law with regard to the parking on North Main Street. And then I've asked David McMaster if he could put in, we had discussed the last meeting, Chapter 167, amending the littering and dumping town code, and hopefully we'll get that on for this Thursday that we can vote on it, to hear it. And I would be looking to hear it in April, since it looks like Thursday, March 17th has quite a few public hearings already scheduled. And that's what I have for today.
Thanks, Kathy. David, do you have a report?
I do, thank you. I want to let everyone know in aquaculture that John Barley Dunn, head of our department right now, this Thursday at 5 p.m. via Zoom, he is having a lecture in shellfish biology, rootstock conditioning, and algae culture. It's highly recommended for any new gardeners or individuals that are interested in that to learn about the basic biology of animals and for this upcoming growing season. So please contact Aquaculture Department if you have any interest in joining in on that. We'll let everyone know that John Rooney from the Parks Department has been working with the YMCA, and they've set up their lifeguarding courses for the upcoming season right now. You can register securely online at the town park department website, and this will be lifeguarding for lifeguarding evaluation and testing, still water certifications and such. They'll be adding the NIPR training and junior lifeguarding training upcoming shortly. So anyone has any need for greater information, please contact the Parks Department at 324-4141. I wanted to let everyone know that I want to thank the support of the board for applying for a grant that we successfully won from the New York State Preservation League. This was for a multiple property documentation for our historical burial grounds. I am in receipt of that book right now. Thank you very much. It's done by, it was done by the Burial Ground Preservation Group. It also includes an application that we can apply for our colonial burial grounds to be put onto the state and potentially National Historical Register, which might get us some greater funding potentials. I haven't had a chance to read it. I will read it, and I will pass a copy along to the board members also then too. But I want to thank the board for their support in that as we continue to move those projects forward. The Cpf Advisory Committee did meet yesterday. We had a discussion from some members that came in to discuss certain projects or historical properties. It was stated by the chairman that the Cpf Advisory Committee wants to continue the policy of not releasing information on a property prior to the perfection of the property's purchase. I know that has come up recently, and that was stated at that meeting by the chairman. I want to let everyone in the public know that the Highway Department has been doing ongoing cutbacks in certain areas of the town's right-of-way. Beach Hampton is one of them. They've been up in my area in Springs also, but the town's right-of-way is the town's right-of-way, not necessarily the individual property owners, and the right-of-way is there for multiple reasons, including sight lines. So if you have discussions or concerns about clippings, we ask for them to be clipped back on a biannual basis by a property owner if they're into the town right away, or the town will come through and make sure that they are clipped back for your vegetation is clipped back for proper sight lines and such. Any questions, please contact the Highway Department, but they are out there actively doing that at this season before at this time of the year before the growing season. And that's all I have today. Thank you very much. Oh, sorry, lastly, if you don't mind me, Peter, as many of you might know, my family and I were in a car accident earlier this week, or last week, when we were visiting my sister in North Carolina. While I am not a first responder, it was the first time that I really needed first responders on site. My family, my children, my father were doing fine. It was amazing to watch first responders help my family in that time of need. I thank all the first responders out there in our community right now. I thank the community of Pittsboro, North Carolina, in assisting us. It was a very scary time, but the effort, the calmness, the assistance with bears and hats for my kids at that time was greatly appreciated. So to our volunteer ranks out here, please, if you're interested in volunteering for one of our emergency technicians, fire department, EMS, or such, please contact them. The volunteers are our lifelines out here, and they need help. So please contact the department if you would like to volunteer. You never know when you're going to need them. That's what I want to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. We're grateful and thankful that you and your family are okay and nobody was seriously hurt. So, let's see, Sylvia, you have a report for us?
Yeah, thanks, David. I really appreciate your kind words to our first responders. So the first thing is you're going to have a resolution on today that we need to rescind our stretch code and hear it. So Kim Shaw, Samantha Klein, Ann Glennon, and John Jelnicki were working with the state to make sure that our wording is correct and that we are not more restrictive than the state code would actually allow. So we need to do some work with the state in order to reword and have the language correct. So you're going to have that in a few minutes when we rescind that. But we will then get the language correct and put it back out for public hearing. Outdoor dining legislation, Rick Wayland, John Jelnicki have been working on that. Rick Wayland is a member of the business community, and we're going to see a copy of it. Oh, I have a copy of it, but we're going to be discussing it tomorrow at the business committee meeting, and hopefully we'll then have a work session on it sometime in March with the town board. Also, David McMaster is working on legislation concerning clearing, and hope that that legislation will be ready soon. And we again will have a work session at the town board so that we can schedule it for a public hearing. So those two things are coming up, and thank both John Jelnicki and David McMaster and Rick Wayland for working on those pieces for us. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Sylvia. Kate, do you have a report for us?
I do. Thank you, Peter. I'd just like to say thank goodness that David and his family are okay and came back home to East Hampton safe. The Spring CAC met last Tuesday. There was a guest speakers. There was a presentation by the Wayne Scott CAC Chair Karen Logan Gluck and Sarah Davison of the Friends of Georgia Capon. And they did a presentation on the proposal of the Wayne Scott commercial plan. That led to a discussion in the CAC of a request for this entire CAC to review the Springs Hamlet plan as well as the East Hampton plan regarding the corridor. And so I sent out the links to both of those plans that are on our website and studies. And at our next meeting, we'll be taking a look. The Spring CAC has some new members, and members haven't really taken a look at that in a while, and we'll be doing that at the next meeting. We had a discussion of litter, which is always a concern of the Spring CAC. In my liaison report to the committee, I talked about the proposed legislation, the changes to our litter code regarding drag out, and they were very pleased and very happy about the proposals. Also on the changes to the, I highlighted David's presentation on the smoking on the beach ban, and that was well received as well. We talked about the Adopt a Highway program and how I can help get the word out on that. In my next section, I'll talk about every time that the supervisor talks about the Solarize program, there's and pardon the pun, surge in applications and people signing up for that. So I hope in the future to be able to do that to the Adopt a Highway program for folks and organizations to adopt a road or adopt a highway and be responsible for some litter pickup on those roads, anything that we can do to reduce the litter. The committee also asked for if we will in the future provide updates on the progress of the COW, the cell on wheels for the emergency communications, and also for the cell tower at the American Tower at the Camp Blue Bay. And I said I would be providing them with that in the future. And that remains on their minds as well to continue our efforts to improve our emergency services and cell services in Springs. The next meeting last night, the Energy Sustainability Committee met. And we had a good presentation from a group that is promoting pollinator gardens and pollinator garden pathways on private properties, looking to reduce our turf lawns and the impacts that non-native species and turf lawns, the use of pesticides have on our insect population, and particularly our bees. And the whole insect habitat that is threatened by pesticides, by the aggressive use of leaf blowers to remove leaves in our understories. And it was a good presentation. They would like to see an example of pollinator garden on town properties. We were able to, and they were very pleased with the work, Peter, you have done to promote that idea, and also the pollinator gardens and the bioswales that are at the Methodist Church. And they'd like to see a continuation of that. But particularly, they'd also like to see schools get involved and libraries and private property owners for this effort. And I'll be talking more about that in the future. As I said, we did have a surge in Solarize, our Solarize program signups after the last press release went out. And anyone interested in signing up for any type of home efficiency, Solarize programs, any of the reduction in carbon emission, fossil fuel use programs that we have. There's rebates on solar pumps. There's all kinds of cost reduction offers on our website, which is energizeeh.org. And please go to that site and take a look at all the things that we offer. To that, there will be a free home efficiency webinar March 15th at 6:30 p.m. And by attending, we can learn more about joining with home efficiency experts to learn about ways of making our homes more comfortable while lowering our utility bills, and that is certainly win-win-win. The informational webinar is free and can give you the tools to save quite a bit of money and protect the environment. And again, you can register now at energizeeh.org. And lastly, I just have an update on the South Fork Wind Farm that the trenching operations for the cable installation, the export cable installation, have begun. They are up at Wainscott Northwest Road, proceeding south. And that work is ongoing and has begun. And I took a ride up and actually went past where they were working the first time and turned around and came back and saw that the trenches had been laid and covered at that beginning section. So they will continue that work going south. And that's what I have.
Thank you, Kate. So I wanted to give everyone a brief update on COVID news here. The test results for the last 2 weeks have resulted in only one positive case reported, which is great news. And as a result, we've reached a milestone. And yesterday, I instructed the lifting of the mask requirement within municipal offices and facilities as of yesterday. Again, we've had success here locally at reducing the spread. We've provided most recently 1,338 vaccines administered at 18 different clinics here in this winter. There are no more clinics for vaccines at this time. If there still remains to be some demand, we can look into providing additional access. Home test kits are still available. We do have some left here at Town Hall if you're looking for a home test kit for COVID. The schedule for testing at CDCH at 110 Stephen Ann's Path is still Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Again, the number of people coming to get tested per week has dropped significantly. We're averaging around 60 or 70 people a week coming in for tests at this point. where we had a weekly high of almost 900 people during the height of the Omicron outbreak. I wanted to report on the Amagansett Citizens Advisory Committee meeting. They held their meeting on Valentine's Day, and I spent that evening with my wife for our 35th Valentine's Day together instead of attending the meeting, but I did get an opportunity to review the recording of the meeting. Jeremy Samuelson, our new planning director, was present and addressed the group. He received a very warm welcome from those in attendance. And of course, we're very happy to have him now as our new planning director. There was a brief discussion about proposed pedestrian and traffic circulation at Indian Wells Beach. There had been a proposal to shift the pedestrian traffic at the end of Bluff Road and Indian Wells to the east side of Indian Wells as it leads down to the beach, so that folks are not walking with their backs against traffic. And also there are some issues with the way the parking is on the west side or the right-hand side as you drive down to the beach, interfering with pedestrian flow as well. So to separate vehicles and pedestrians, the proposal is to remove the sidewalks on the west side of the road and install a few more parking spots along that section. There will be further discussion next week. And because I wasn't at the meeting, I think there was a little bit of confusion about what was actually being proposed. So we'll discuss that more and get some input from CAC members about that proposed plan, which was really brought forward by the Chief of Police and Highway Department. I think, David, you also were involved with looking at that. We had a brief discussion about the lighting within the Amagansett. There's quite a bit of interest in improving the lighting, removing some of the Cobra street lights and replacing them with more fitting historical type of lampposts that would be more consistent with the historic district there in the downtown. And really there was interest in taking a comprehensive look at lighting throughout the hamlet, but particularly from the stretch of Abraham's Path all the way to the east end of the business district by the grocery store and in that area. There was just an update on the Postal Delivery. There has been an ongoing effort to get home delivery for Amagansett, and all the necessary forms and requests and petitions and everything have been submitted to the Postal Service, and they're waiting to hear a response about that effort. I had an opportunity to meet with Stephen Long of the East Hampton Historical Society. We discussed the need for storage of artifacts and historic collections within the town, both those from the Farm Museum as well as those owned by the Historical Society. And also the town, as board members know, there's been an offer of a donation of a remarkable collection of historic farm implements and tools and historical items from East Hampton and nearby communities on the South Fork. It's an extensive collection, and so trying to figure out a way that we can accept that collection, have it curated, stored, and presented to the public in perpetuity is an effort that we're looking into in conjunction with the Historical Society. I had a meeting with the Windmill Village Board about a potential expansion of Windmill 1. They're looking to submit a preliminary site plan in the near future. This would be taking some of the existing structures and going two-story to increase the total number of units. This, again, is an affordable housing property that is geared towards senior affordable housing. And they certainly, like all sectors of affordable housing are seeing a large need. There is a significant waiting list, and this, they think, may be one solution to easing some of that pressure and providing additional affordable housing on an existing developed site. So we look forward to their submission in the near future. There was mention of the pollinator garden, and we'd like to see this spring some of the larger areas of lawn here at Town Hall return to wildflowers. And so we're going to do a pilot to try and accomplish that and reduce the amount of area that needs to be mowed. As the board members know, we already have a large commercial grade electric mower that mows Town Hall campus. But being able to have some of these larger areas of lawn return to support pollination, pollinator species is very important. We encourage people to do that at their own homes. Dedicate an area of your lawn or your yard to a pollinator garden. It's so critically important to our natural world to support pollinators and other insects, as they are really a key species in the whole web of life here, and supports every other living creature, whether it be birds and other plants. They're very beneficial. So we encourage you to look into doing that. And of course, if you are interested in solar, I'll make another plug for our solar program. You can call our Natural Resources Department and find out more at 631-324-0496. And that's all I have for today.
So Peter, were you going to talk about the modular homes?
Oh, I was. Yeah, thanks so much. I forgot to write that down on my list. We did have a caller today who spoke a bit about this, and it's come to the board's attention. And I think partially it's due to the fact that there are more and more people who are using modular homes to be built rather than stick built, that we're seeing an increase in the number of companies that are seeking to store temporarily these modular units. And there's been really no cohesive policy in dealing with that. In the past, sometimes it's been the highway department instructing, taking the requests and instructing where to park. Sometimes it's been the police department. And I think it's gotten to the point now where it's important for all the departments within the town to be coordinating so that we know that permissions and proper hold harmless agreements and insurance are in place, and that we've reviewed these requests and vetted them and identified areas where they can be stored temporarily, where they don't disrupt either residences or the public's ability to access our parks, et cetera. We did have also another, I think 7 or 8 units that showed up over at Stephen Hand's path along the ball fields there. I don't know if they're still there, but I think the time's come for us to put together a cohesive, coherent policy and permitting process to make sure that those concerns are addressed. So we can have a discussion about that at an upcoming work session. Have some proposals, some proposed locations. Some of our beach locations might be appropriate this time of year. They wouldn't be appropriate during the season. Some of our other parks, again, this time of year may not get as much, those parking lots may not get as much traffic, but I think, these requests have to be reviewed and approved by the town.
So I think in the meantime, can we at least direct highway and police department to make sure that all requests come to the town board? So even though we may not have a policy completed by that, because I know spring is here. And,
Well, I agree. I mean, I sent around an email before basically expressing that desire that all such requests really should be forwarded to the town board for the use in the town attorney's office for use of town public property.
Okay, and the other issue was that, if they're near a neighborhood, and when they get to the neighborhood, and that it really is disturbing during the middle of the night, or early morning, is not, something that we want to continue. We at least need to be aware, and they should be notified at some point in time as well.
Yes, and as you say, we heard from the caller today, if the arrival was, during business hours, then it's not likely to be an issue. But if it's, waking people up in the middle of the night, flashing lights, loud truck noises, whatnot, that's probably not acceptable. And also that might limit the areas to which we give permission as well. So we need to take a look at all that. And so for the time being, those requests should be made directly to the town board.
Great, thank you.
So we do have a few resolutions to offer. I think, David, you have the first.
I do. I'd like to offer Resolution 2022-304. This amends Resolution 2022-289, the 2021 budget modification for buildings and grounds. This takes an expense for $800 from office expense to light and power.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passed and carried.
305 is authorize the payment of 2021 invoice for Highway Department. This is for emergency medical services in the amount of $5,472.16 from invoice 9996.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passed and carried.
306 is the authorized payment of 2021 invoices for the Highway Department. We have invoice 33223, $91.52. Invoice 33414, $1,773.34. Invoice 3825 in the amount of $1,389.31 for a total of $3,254.17.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passed and carried.
307 is the authorized payments of the 2021 invoice for Highways Department. This is authorized Malvis. Amount to be paid is $275.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passed and carried. Thanks, David. Sylvia?
Resolution 308 is to repeal local law number 23 of the 2021, amend chapter 102, building construction, article 1, New York stretch code 2020, supplement to the energy conservation construction code. This is what I spoke about earlier. So we're rescinding it. There is only one, oops, where did I find it? There was one spelling problem, but I'll find it and get it to John or to.
They already fixed it.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I think it's the last line. Effective immediately is misspelled. Effective. It's missing the C.
Okay, that too. There was another one, but that's all right. So I offer that resolution.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed and carried. And resolution 2022-309 is Sergeant Rozzi training, and resolve Sergeant Bradley Rozzi is hereby authorized to attend the Tactical Team Leadership Forum sponsored by NYS Division of Homeland Security. And that's in Saratoga Springs from March 2nd to March 4th. And that's not to exceed $500.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Pass carried. 2022-310 is a payout upon resignation. Robert Green III. Resolved, the Finance Office authorized to issue a check for payroll or the appropriate payroll account for vacation time in the amount of $11,550.42 and personal time in the amount of $2,008.77 for a gross total of $13,559.19.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Pass carried. Resolution 311 is to retain professional consultant for email migration to 365G3 email. And the board hereby retains Best Tech to provide services for the migration of email from the premises exchanged from on-premise Exchange 2013 to Office 365 email as set forth in the proposed agreement at a cost not to exceed $12,680.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, passed and carried. I'll take a motion to go into executive
I have an
session.
additional resolution. It's
Oh, you
additional
do?
resolution.
Okay. Sorry, Dave.
No worries. Additional resolution 27447. This is to pay the invoice from 2021 to Rosemar in the amount of $321.
Is that correct, Carol?
I had put it on for Thursday because it wasn't necessary for today, but that's all right. I'll change it back.
Okay, I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passed and carried. I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session.
Motion to go into exec session for leases, licensing agreement, personnel, and advice of counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
We also might have land purchasing.
And
CPF.
and CPF land purchase.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed and carried. Shall we convene at 2 o'clock? Reconvene at 2?
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Stay safe, be well, everyone. Thank you, LTV.